Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heel vs Babyface. Next week sees the launch of patch 6.1. That's 5 expansions now that have had a 0.1 offering. So which expansion has the best? I'm going to rate the 0.1 expansions in the order which I believe the quality of the content comes out on top. Number 5. With subscription numbers at an all-time low with Mists of Pandaria, Blizzard literally reinvented the world of Warcraft with its next offering, Warlords of Draenor, taking you to an alternate timeline of the Orc homeworld and part-time Draenei refugee camp, Draenor, prior to its being destroyed by Nazul. After a very impressive display at BlizzCon, the community began to have its faith in the franchise restored somewhat, even if the beta did take an absolute age to arrive, and a lot of the content announced at BlizzCon either removed or watered down so much it could give a bottle of Avion a run for its money. But the desire to get out of Pandaria as quickly as possible was stronger than the sum of all those fears, and subscriber numbers boomed to a massive 10 million with its release. With the alarming trend of subscriber decline plugged, the community looked to Blizz to usher them into a new golden age, especially now Project Titan have been scrapped and word coming out from Blizzard themselves that they wanted to support WoW for a further 10 years. After only a couple of months of launch though, it became very apparent indeed that the content was somewhat on the short supply, with the 8 launch dungeons very quickly becoming irrelevant due to raiding and LFR, and a rather terrible reputation and Apexis Crystal grind system, one that was even more dull than listening to a 6-hour Tom Chilton lecture where he discusses the history of dirt. But 6.1 was quickly announced after the new year, and the 10 million strong community beaks were raised open into the air, waiting for Mother Blizzard to regurgitate content food into their mouths. This though was taken a little bit too literally, as the content being offered in patch 6.1 was highly concentrated with regurgitated nonsense. Why create new dungeons when you can simply offer a daily quest sending you back into the irrelevant ones? It didn't matter that you no longer needed gear or items from them, because Blizz were now offering a reward bag at the end with a chance, not even a guarantee, to proc a higher level item. Sick of the Apexis Crystal dailies yet? Well, of course you are. So it comes as a logic-defying cry of WTF that the bulk of 6.1's content is the ability to do these quests over and over and over again as many times a day as you like, as long as you have the garrison resources to purchase the missive required. Other than that, content is nigh on non-existent, with a daily quest being offered by one of only 5 NPCs in your garrison, and if you don't get the one that you want, you can wander off to one of your friends or guildies garrisons like a reject from the littlest hobo in an attempt to get the one that you do. The only thing that sounds remotely cool is the ability to summon one of 6 world bosses into your garrison that can be brought to task by 10 to 40 people. But even then, the incentives aren't really there for defeating it over and over, with a reward bag once more being offered with a chance to proc either a 645 or 655 level item. Pretty much useless to anyone that raids, and no mounts on offer either, as those are making their way to the Blizzard store instead. Blizz have decided to opt for more faddy and self-promotional content, integrating Twitter into WoW in an effort to get World of Warcraft trending and relevant, and the selfie cam, because screenshots aren't nearly as cool as our favourite narcissistic pastime. With approximately 220 employees now working for Blizzard on World of Warcraft alone, the largest by a huge margin that there has ever been, 6.1's offering is nothing short of embarrassing, with the shadow hanging over that Blizzard are passively trying to use their 6.0 raid content, Blackrock Foundry, as content to carry this patch. It's yet another slap in the face to community that keeps giving them chance after chance after chance. Number 4. Patch 4.1 has placed higher than 6.1 simply by virtue of default, using the equation of dungeons are better than dailies as the determining factor. Well, that, and it was actually given a proper name and cutscene, something 6.1 hasn't. Cataclysm was a really bizarre expansion, one that I ended up giving Blizz the benefit of the doubt about though. It's not one I tend to so much slag off, but to actually feel sorry for. Blizzard did an absolutely amazing job of reworking the whole of Azeroth, with every single zone being remade and the ability to fly brought in because of it. Old quests were dumped and new ones brought in. Old gear disposed of. No more strength and spirit items for you, m'laddie. Proper stats were introduced. There was one massive problem though. The majority of this work was going to suit people that wanted to start a character from level 1. And not many people wanted to do that. They wanted to play their freshly dinged level 85s. So when it came to content for them to play, it was kinda forgotten about. And with the introduction of Dungeon Finder and such, Cata became the expansion that no one left their capital cities for. Seriously, there was absolutely no reason for you to go out into the world at all. Nothing for people to do except wait for the dungeon queue to pop or for a couple of kind souls to summon you to raid. But patch 4.1, Rise of the Zandalari, are you listening 6.1, did at least have the redeeming factor that it brought in 2 new major dungeons. Zul'Grub had been reworked from a level 60 40-person raid into a 5-person dungeon with a decent number of bosses and 2 mounts to farm as well. There was also a pet thrown in for good measure. On top of that, there were quest chains leading into it and also multiple quests to do once you were inside. Suleiman was the other, and had been reworked from a 10-person level 70 raid into this 5-person dungeon. Once more, there was more here than met the eye, as a new version of the Amity Warbear was now on offer to people that completed the dungeon in under a certain period of time. That extra incentive, which sadly has been missing from the game for a number of years now. Whereas a few people might have experienced ZA from the Burning Crusade expansion days in its raid form, not a lot of people had properly experienced ZG as a vanilla raid, and so this did feel rather fresh and new to the vast majority of the community, and it offered high enough leveled gear to actually enable you to catch up if you'd missed out on patch 4.0's raid content. Other than the dungeons though, there was very little on offer here, with a few guild tweaks to try and get the community spirit going again. But that said, it was certainly more engaging than 6.1 is shaping up to be, and the rewards and incentives are so much better, and that is why it slips into 4th spot. Number 3. Yes, hold on to your hats people, I actually placed patch 5.1 higher than that of Cata and WoD's offerings, and if you know anything about my complete disdain for Mr. Pandaria, that will shock you to your very core. But if I look at patch 5.1 in terms of pure content offered and quality of that content, then it just edges out 4.1 because of its diversity. Even though there were no raids or dungeons on offer here, I believe content was added that attempted at least to appeal to different demographics of the community, more so than the other two. Firstly, we had the Pandaren campaign starting in Krasarang Wilds, which physically altered how the world looked, which is something that always seems to appeal to WoW players. Why? Because we like to see physical evolution within the game, and phasing areas to show more up-to-date versions are a great example of this. Hence why a large part of the community would love to see Silvermoon rebuilt to reflect the changes in the Sunwell. Even if it would allegedly cost us 6 raid tiers, 598 dungeons and our left nipple for it to happen. Yes, it was massively flawed as it attempted to force PvP conflict between the two factions when they were really more interested in just doing the god-awful dailies on offer and getting out of there as quickly as possible. But when you did start to gain reputation with these factions, then you opened up a really cool and interesting storyline. You didn't have to wait for the breaks in reputation grind either, like moving from friendly to honoured. No, these storylines could pop pop up a third of the way through your reputation bar, and maybe even again before you did rank up. This went down really well with the community, something Blizzard themselves acknowledged and subsequently managed to fuck up in future patches, making story elements more forced and linear and destroying all the charm that this originally offered. Anyway, there was also the Brawlers Guild, one of the best and understated pieces of content Blizzard have ever created. Highly appealing to many, they attempted to release this as exclusive content to only a small few. Pay through the nose at the black market auction house and you could get your hands on one of the few passes that were on offer at the start of 5.1, but that would allow you to face off against some really cool, fun, challenging and hard bosses in the whole of the game in this solo gladiatorial fest. This was not only a great form of content, but seriously allowed you to learn more about your class than you ever thought you could, switching up specs and abilities constantly if you were to succeed. It still remains some of the best things to do with your hands outside of masturbation. Item upgrades were also introduced here. What initially looked like a sexy way to upgrade gear soon turned into a lazy way for Blizzard to offer you no content while still personally progressing your character, but we weren't to know that at the time. So a great story and much maligned masterpiece of content elevates 5.1 above that of 4.1 and 6.1. If only we were aware of the sins ahead. Ugh. Number 2. The gap between positions 2 and 3 cannot be quantified in a number, but needless to say, it's rather colossal, and the content of patch 2.1 embarrasses that of the previous 3. Bear in mind also, the number of staff working on WoW at this time was exponentially less than we have now, a huge sad reflection of what's become of Blizzard and their culture of ridiculous excuses about lack of content. If patch 2.1 was to come out tomorrow, it would be hailed as an absolute gem of a patch. Just don't mention 2.2, shh. Bringing with it a plethora of content. Firstly, we have the launch of the Black Temple, a 9-boss much-loved raid, culminating with a battle to the death against Illidan. Yes, he's dead, get over it. But he can't die properly, he's a demon, get over it. We then had multiple quest hubs opening up that were only accessible to people that had flying mounts, which were bloody hard to get hold of, as they cost a fortune at the time. The Ethereum Prison, Sketis with the Arakoa and the Skyguard, and Ogrilar Ogres with the Skyguard again, chiming in next door with their famous bombing run. And of course, Netherwing Ledge, in an effort, and believe me when I say it was an effort, to get our hands on the various Nether Drakes. Druids could also begin to work towards their epic flight form, allowing them to soar at 310% speed, way before the vast majority of other players, and also way before people decided to bitch to Warlocks about having their own Green Fire class quest. And on top of this, there was also the new PvP arena added, Ruins of Lordaeron. And even with all of this, people were still trying to make their way through the previous levels of raid content too. And so when 2.3 came out, because we don't mention 2.2, people were ready not to transition into Zul'Aman, but to add it to their current progression within the Black Temple. I can't deny that I look back at TBC with a certain degree of rose-tinted specs, but then again, content on paper doesn't lie, and 2.1 storms the number 2 spot, leaving the previous 3 wishing they'd taken a left turning at Albuquerque. Number 1. You could argue, and it would be very difficult to argue against you, that WoW peaked with Wrath of the Lich King. Not only was the expansion absolutely epic, but it boasted a treasure trove of content, which is a little bit ironic because ICC was with us for nearly a year, with only Hallion being added during that period. But we could still forgive because there was so much to do and WoW subs were at an all-time high. Sorry to steal your lyrics, Mr. James Bond. So it comes as no real surprise that it would also offer the best 0.1 content out of all the other expansions. Not only did we get the massive 14 boss Ulduar raid that allowed you to play hard and fast with the encounters, giving you decisions to make on whether or not you wanted to force the fight into their heroic version, a method that I believe is so much better than this ridiculous bloated 4-layer raid difficulty that we have now, or 3 if you ditch tourist mode. But we also got a precursor to the raid afterwards, with the Argent tournament beginning to get underway. This piece of content I would put right up there with the likes of the Brawlers Guild. Okay, they might not have got this absolutely perfect, but it was an excellent idea that was completely different from anything we'd seen before, or let's face it, since in the World of Warcraft. Loads of rewards were on offer, from mounts, pets, faction tabards, titles, giving you a huge sense of pride not only with your faction but the city that you represented within it. All this started in 3.1. And then we have one of the biggest and most drastic changes to the World of Warcraft, dual spec. Yes, it began in 3.1, and I must confess to having absolutely no understanding whatsoever why Blizzard haven't expanded on this, allowing us tri-spec or even quad spec, giving more classes, more choices, and therefore more leeway to experiment, which hopefully could at least go some way to alleviating this horrific lack of tank and heal of drought that we have at the moment. It cost around 1,000 gold when it first came out, a rather hefty chunk of cash in those days, but oh boy was it worth it. This wasn't just a heavy content patch, it was also a heavy quality patch, as all the offerings were of a very high standard indeed. Releasing approximately 5 months after the launch of the expansion, it wasn't compensating for any lack of current content, it was complementing it. 3.1 can stand proud of what Blizzard could achieve for its community should it wish to. Much smaller teams creating way more content of a very high quality indeed. No matter how many times Blizzard say they want to create smaller patches but get them out more often, until they actually quit gabbing and get going, we'll be left with what we currently have had in recent times. Smaller patches, less often, with little to no content. So there you go, that is how I rank the 0.1 expansion patches in order. How do you rank them? Post in the comments below your top 5 in order. And I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Those links are in the description below, and I'll be back with more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye bye.